Well, good day there. This is Joe Van Cleve, and welcome to another episode of the Typewriter video series. Today we're going to continue with a survey of my typewriter collection. Now, I've been trying to keep this survey in the chronological order of the machines as I collected them, but last episode I kind of jumped forward in time and covered the latest machine in my collection, the Faucet 1620. Well, we're going to go back now and continue with the chronological order of my collection of all the machines I still have, that is. So the next machine in my collection that we're going to talk about is the Smith Corona Silent. So stay tuned. If you're a typewriter collector and you have been collecting typewriters from thrift stores, antique stores, and Goodwills and those kind of places, I always recommend it's a good idea to keep your receipt. I keep my receipts in the typewriter case, and also if it comes with like original metal spools, ribbon spools, I kind of keep those just for the sake of it. But this particular typewriter, the Smith Corona Silent, the nice thing about having the receipt is the date. So the date of my purchase was December 22nd, 2014. So it's almost been 2 years since I've had it. And they were asking $48, but there was a 20% discount. I guess it was a Christmas sale. So I paid $38.40 plus tax for this machine, which I thought under $40 for a Smith Corona Silent of this era is pretty good. So let's open up the case and take a look at the machine, shall we? And so here is the case, and we unlatch it, and there is the typewriter. And to remove the typewriter from its case, we're going to press down this lever near the left front corner and then pick up the front of it and then slide it out towards you. Well, here she is. It is a crinkle paint finish, gray with dark green keys and brown spacebar and kind of lighter green accessory keys on the side. So kind of a three-color tritone type of color scheme. The carriage return, or I should say the carriage knobs, are also brown, kind of matching the space bar. What I really like about this era, this 1950s era of Smith Coronas, is they really kind of embody the whole style of consumer products of that time. You can kind of see in the shape of this typewriter a 1950s Chevrolet or Ford car, an automobile. It has the same kind of rounded, what you might call the melted candy bar. My dad used to call the 1950s cars upside down bathtubs on wheels, because they had that kind of bathtub appearance, you know, and you can kind of see that in this kind of styling. It's different from the 1930s and 40s styling. It's more rounded, and you can kind of see where there's a modernist kind of a touch being applied to the styling, and yet the colors are kind of drab. These were, well, they're portable machines, but they're kind of designed for the office, I guess. They're not, manufacturers didn't really get into the idea of typewriters as design and decor, and probably until maybe Olivetti started making more colorful ones, although I have to backtrack on that statement, because as early as the 1920s, Corona were building the Corona 4s in a bunch of different colors, so that's not, there was a precedent set earlier. But anyways, there is a particular 1950s style to this shape and color of machine that I kind of really appreciate. So I'm going to start on the underneath side of the machine instead of on top, because you'll find what's neat about this is once you pull it out of the case and you flip it over, you have direct and ready access to all the mechanical parts underneath the machine. And what's especially great about the design of these Smith Coronas is the escapement mechanism, like the escapement gear, is all readily accessible right there. For servicing, for cleaning, degreasing, lubrication, etc. These types of Smith Coronas are just fantastic. If you compare this with, for instance, an Olivetti Lettera 22 or 32, where the escapement mechanism is buried deep inside the machine, you can't even get to it without totally disassembling the machine. These Smith Coronas in comparison are so wonderfully free and easy to get to the mechanical parts. So let's start with the keyboard in terms of the features and functions. Let's start on the upper left side. There is a lever here, a little chrome lever, and it's not labeled, and it flips up and down. And what that does is that determines the direction of rotation of the ribbon. So the ribbon moves one way, and you flip the lever, and the ribbon spools move the other way. Now, why would you need manual reversing of your ribbon spools, you might ask, especially considering the fact that this machine has the auto reverse feature already? I think the reason why is because even in the 1950s, there were still ribbons being manufactured that did not have the auto reversing grommets on the ends of the ribbons. Remember, not every machine had auto reversing, and there was a legacy market of older typewriters with ribbons that didn't use grommets. And so to accompany or to accommodate those older ribbons, they gave you a manual reversing switch. Okay, so this is right here is the backspace lever with the classic little right-hand arrow. Here is the left-hand shift and shift lock levers. Space bar, chocolate brown. And on the right side up here, you have the ribbon color selector with the top of the ribbon, which is a dark blue dot being represented there. And then the bottom position is the bottom of the ribbon, which is represented by a red color. And of course, the middle position is the stencil position where the ribbon vibrator doesn't come up at all. Next is the tab button. Now, one of the features that distinguishes a Smith Corona Silent from a Smith Corona Silent Super is the Silent, which is what this machine is, has preset tabs. And they are defined by some slugs in the back of the carriage, which I'll show you here in a few minutes. But they're fixed positions. You can actually move the slugs, but it's not very convenient to do so. So you have fixed or preset tabs, and you have the margin release lever, so that enables you to go beyond the right or left hand margins. And then you have the right hand shift button, shift key. This particular keyboard is an American style keyboard. You have the $ above the 4, and you have 1/4 and 1/2 as far as fractions. And of course, being an older style keyboard, you don't have a number 1. Instead, you have to use a lowercase l. Next, we're going to look at underneath the ribbon cover, and the ribbon cover just pulls right up like that. It kind of clips into place, simple pull up. On the left front side of the ribbon cover is the touch selector, and it goes between low, 2, 3, 4, 5, and high. And this particular machine, I find for my uses, I like to have it about at 5. There is a subtle difference in feel between the various settings, and it all depends on how well degreased and lubricated the mechanism is. The linkages, the common bar that all the linkages for all the typewriters, type bars connect to, that the force of that bar is what this is controlling, the spring tension on it. Here's your left and right ribbon spools. They use standard ribbon spools, and this particular machine is a segment shift or basket shift, which is nice because it gives it a nice low force shifting with your pinky fingers. The padding underneath the type bars is a felt strip that appears to be glued to a piece of leatherette material, and then that's glued to a metal curved bar underneath. This particular machine is Elite font, 12 characters per inch, and of course the floating shift here. And this machine is really a nice typing machine, I gotta say. I like the Smith Corona logo. I like the 3 stripes on each side. One of the great features of these Smith Coronas is the shape and position of the carriage return lever. It comes out nicely all the way almost to the front of the ribbon cover, and it's not too high up like the Hermes typewriters, I think some of the Olympias, the carriage return levers are long, but they're kind of a little higher, and it kind of is more of a reach. But these Smith Coronas, they have the carriage return levers nice and low, where you can reach them real easy. Well, let's look at the back of the typewriter, the carriage assembly. Here is the right side of the carriage. So you have your right-hand carriage knob. You have the carriage release lever right here. where you pull it forward and you can slide the carriage between the limits of the margin stops. You have a nice metal lever for lifting up the paper bale, which is really handy. It's very ergonomic. And the paper bale has 3 rollers. They're hard rubber rollers, and they are adjustable. And the nice thing about this machine is they move, but they don't move too easy. So there's some force required to slide them. They don't slide around on their own. This lever here releases the tension on the pressure rollers underneath the platen. And then you have your margin stops, which simply push and slide left and right. And on this particular machine, if you flip down this back panel where the word silent is, and oh, by the way, your paper supports fold out from that back panel. But if you fold it down, you're going to have the slugs for your preset tab positions. And there's also another lever. Let's see if I can move the typewriter and show you here. But in the front of the right side platen knob, if you move the carriage to the right and you lift this lever up here and slide it to the left, it'll lock the carriage in the middle position for storage. Okay, like that. And then, if you flip the back panel out, flip up the paper bale, and then this lever here, if you pull it up, you can pull out the platen roller. So very easy to remove the platen. This is the left side of the platen, this is the right side. You have to pull out the middle button on the left carriage knob to free it up. To put it back in, you're just going to put this hole back into this shaft here on the left side and push it down until it clicks here, and that's it. That's all you have to do. Easy peasy. Okay, this is a view of the back of the machine. If you simply fold down the back panel, this gains you access to this notched bar where you have the manually adjustable tab slugs. And these slugs, this particular machine came with 5 of them, and you simply pull them out with a pair of pliers and then put them into the slots wherever you want a tab to be. So that's kind of a preset tab situation. This was a lower end model from the Silent Supers. The Silent Supers have a key set tabulator set and clear up here on the keyboard, but this is a preset with slugs. On the left side, you have 1, 2, or 3 line spacing selector for your carriage return. 1, 2, 3. There's your line spacing selector. And this right here is your paper guide. Here's your left margin setting. Simply press and slide. Very easy. And then this lever here, if you pull it forward, it disengages the line spacing. If you release it back into the ratcheting, you go back to your former ratcheting. So this is like a temporary release of the line spacing, enabling you to adjust for being able to type into preset forms or whatever. On the other hand, the button here inside the left carriage platen knob, if you pull it out, it enables you to permanently adjust the vertical line spacing. And this would be more for if you had a document that you had already typed on this machine earlier and you want to feed it back into the machine. This is how you would kind of readjust the line spacing to match the previous setting. And of course, this is the left-hand platen knob, carriage return lever. I should also mention that along the front bottom edge of the carriage is a paper scale also that kind of corresponds to the paper scale up here on the paper table up above. But there's your paper scale. And then while we're here, there are little hold down pressure rollers, one on the left and one on the right side. And this is kind of a legacy design from way back in the Corona days. This one here and this one here. So the thing is, it depends on where your margin is set. If your margin is set pretty wide to the edge of the paper and you have this paper roller set too far in, then as you move your margin back, the machine is going to push that roller back out toward the edge of the paper. So it's best, I find, just to set the roller, slide it out near the edge of the paper on that side and on this side so it doesn't interfere. So a little test typing. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So I like the feel of this typewriter. The keys are really solid. The linkages have very little play in them. As soon as you start pressing the key down, the type slug or the type bar starts to move. This is one of the great things about these Smith Coronas is they feel real tight. And I have two of these from this era. I have this one and then a Silent Super, and they both have this great feel to them. Also, the Carriage return lever just has that great feel. Now, the Carriage isn't nearly as smooth as I would say the Fawcett 1620 that you saw in the last video, but of course that's a newer typewriter and has that unique tubular bearing race. But these Smith Coronas have a great feel. Pack my box with 5 dozen liquor jugs. Yeah, this has a really tight feel to it. I really like it. And this is one of the things that attracted me to this typewriter after I had read about these and heard about these typewriters, how good they typed and how they felt, but I didn't really appreciate that until I got this machine and started experiencing it, and it's really a great typewriter. And let me show you the typing, type font, type style. So this typewriter's been sitting out in my garage for the last month or so, and so the ribbon is probably not quite absolutely fresh, but it has a very interesting style of lettering. Some of the letters have an interesting shape to them, like the R and the F and the J. So it's a very kind of a different type style, I find, from the standard typeface of this period. I really like this typewriter, more so than I thought I would. I think aesthetically, the thing that turned me off initially was the colors, the drab colors. But once I began experiencing the touch of the typewriter, the way it feels, the tightness of it, it really changed my mind. And also, it is a pretty solidly made typewriter. You can really feel the mechanical legacy of the 1930s and 40s in this particular design. It really is heavy, well made, and it doesn't represent the era when later on in the 60s you can kind of sense the quality of construction began to decline in American typewriters. But this is really solid, well made. You know, the nice thing about it is these aren't really that big, and the case even, with the typewriter in the case, it's easily luggable. It is a small, relatively small typewriter. The case is a little taller than an ultra portable, but it's not really that much wider than one. And so I find these to be almost an ideal shape and size for a medium-sized portable. It's hard to go wrong with one of these typewriters, these Smith Coronas from the 1950s. Find yourself one in good condition, one that, like this one. I discovered that when I first started using the roll of teletype paper earlier this year, this was the machine that I started typing a lot with. And I discovered that I called it my beater typer, not because it's a bad machine, but because it just keeps going, and it doesn't have any skipping, escapement issues, spacing issues, just no mechanical problems at all. It's just very reliable, and it takes a beating, and I've even used it out in my man cave shed in the heat of the summer, and in the colder months it just seems to be super reliable and goes and goes and goes. And it's not really that big or that heavy, certainly heavier and bigger than an ultra portable, but not much bigger or heavier. So again, these, what I think they are called 5 series, Smith Coronas from this era of the 1950s are just workhorse great machines, and you should get one if you see one in good shape. Ignore the colors, the drab grays and browns and dark greens. I don't think they made any. I did see one of these in an antique store that was a powder blue, and I almost picked it up, and they wanted $90 for it, and I thought it was too much money. And also, the previous owner had scratched their social security number in large font right across the front of the ribbon panel, and that was the main detractor for me buying that. But there were a few of these. I think there's also some pink ones that they made, but the pink and the blue ones are a little harder to find. Much more common is these kind of more office drab colors. Well, I really enjoyed sharing this machine with you today. Again, this is one of my favorite machines. Until next time, you have yourselves a great day.